comes as no surprise that the Kremlin uses fossil fuels to try to blackmail us.
Russia cuts off natural gas to 2 NATO countries.
The state recording January and February as the driest 2-month start to a year on record in California.
Unprecedented water restrictions for Southern California. Record-breaking heat wave broils India and Pakistan. Plus,
the world needs zero-emissions vehicles. And more importantly, it needs us to bring them to the many.
Ford officially launches the all-electric F-150 Lightning pickup.
All of those electrifying stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
The bipartisan infrastructure bill allocated $7.5 billion for EV charging stations for the entire country. Elon Musk is spending nearly 6 times that amount to buy a website where people can write stuff in 280 characters.
Which tells us 2 things. 1, people really, really like electric vehicles. And 2, taxes are way too low for rich people and corporations. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we are barely into spring, but already much of the world is, as you said, beginning to broil.
Indeed, it is only April, but extreme heat is already hammering Southeast Asia. Parts of Pakistan hit record-breaking temperatures of 117 degrees Fahrenheit this week, with millions of people facing power outages of up to 14 hours a day. India just recorded its hottest March in history in more than a century of record keeping, and weeks of extreme heat are hammering India's crop yields, with some areas reporting as much as a 35% drop in wheat production. Russian state-owned energy giant Gazprom has shut off natural gas deliveries to Poland and Bulgaria after both countries rejected the Kremlin's new demand that they pay for gas in Russian rubles. Poland says it has ample supply and has been working for years to end its reliance on Russian fossil fuels. Bulgaria gets over 90% of its gas from Russia, and officials say they are working to find other sources. It's a dramatic escalation of Russia using energy as a weapon to retaliate against countries helping Ukraine resist its brutal invasion.
Yeah, but it's not a dramatic escalation of wars revolving around fossil fuels now, is it? We've been doing this for years.
In a Wednesday press conference, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called Russia's moves blackmail.
Today, the Kremlin failed once again in his attempt to sow division among member states. The era of Russian fossil fuel in Europe is coming to an end. We have reduced already the flow of gas coming from Russia, and with the plans I've just displayed, we will be able to get independent of Russian fossil fuels much faster, and this is for good and forever.
Bloomberg News reports that Russia's invasion has turbocharged the global market for coal. Spiking oil and gas prices caused by Russia's invasion has had a domino effect, pushing electricity producers to scramble for fuel supply, pushing coal prices to record levels. In bone-dry Southern California, for the first time ever, water officials declared a water shortage emergency and have issued unprecedented new restrictions limiting outdoor watering to only 1 day per week in parts of the region. In a press conference, Metropolitan Water District CEO Devin Uppaday warned even a total ban may be necessary in some areas if conditions don't improve.
And they won't improve.
There is not enough supply available to meet the normal demands in these areas for the remainder of the year.
For the remainder of the year, it's only April.
Indeed. But some good news. Social media giant Twitter banned misleading advertisements that deny the scientific consensus of climate change. An all-electric concept car by Mercedes-Benz just set a new EV world record, driving 621 miles on a single charge over the Swiss Alps.
Cool.
And finally, Ford Motor Company officially launched its all-electric Ford F-150 Lightning truck in Michigan this week, but the city power went out. Detroit Free Press reports that the Lightning trucks were then pressed into service, along with generators to run the launch event until grid power was eventually restored.
Sounds like a scam to me. Are you sure that really happened?
It really did, and Detroit Free Press says it was not staged. Ford CEO Jim Farley got a bit cheeky when touting the truck's capabilities.
You can even charge other EVs for your friends that own Teslas.
Nice. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank-approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to The Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Going to start right off at the top. Want to welcome our new friends and affiliate, KCAA in Loma Linda. Thanks for being here, our friends in San Bernardino, Riverside, and the rest of the Inland Empire. So excited to be here, and especially want to thank our friends at Teamsters Local 1932, our exclusive sponsor for this program, which will be heard daily here on this station, noon to 1 p.m. Pacific time. So tune in every day. So excited. Full disclosure, going to get this out of the way right from the start. The reason I'm so excited that Local 1932 is our exclusive sponsor for this hour. I am a card-carrying Teamster, have been for more than 30 years, and I wear that proudly. There is no one who is going to shame me, no matter how hard you try, and you can. I do accept all criticism, and I will push back on it. While I've been a radio broadcaster for 17 years, I am a card-carrying Teamster truck driver by trade and very proud of it and grateful for it. And I think it's these moments of learning, these moments of reaching out and educating and sharing that we're going to have over these next days, weeks, and months. We're going to have some great conversations. We're going to have some moments where we agree, we disagree. We're going to laugh. We're going to cry. We're going to be angry. We're going to be happy. It's going to be good. It's going to be fabulous. So I just want you to know, I lay my bias on the table right from the start. We know where we are. We know who we are. We know where we're going forward. The one premise that I start with in every conversation, every issue, everything I do, and you'll know this, and it will come out in everything we do, is my guiding principle is, how are we going to make the lives of working people better? How are we going to make it easier for working families to put food on the table? How are we going to make it easier to keep a roof over your head? How are we going to make it easier to get kids to have the opportunities that I have had and been very fortunate in my life to have had? And you'll hear my stories. I'll be sharing those things in the days, weeks, and months to come. As a kid growing up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland, I now live in a neighborhood with doctors and lawyers, not because I'm particularly smart, not because I'm particularly industrious, but because I work hard, and my union contract helps protect the wages, hours, and conditions that I have been benefited from. And just as a kid, and I talk about this often, growing up, you saw when someone got a union job, their lives got better. And I think that's the message in this moment where we're in. We've come out of this pandemic where if nothing that we learn out of this pandemic, if there's nothing that we've learned, it's that corporate America, well, they're going to take care of themselves. And we as working people, we've got to band together and demand that we're taken care of, and that we take care of ourselves. And we do that by what? By organizing, by coming together, by standing together, by joining together in solidarity and fighting for those better wages, hours, conditions. So as I said, my guiding principle is, how are we going to make workers' lives better? How do we make sure that children don't go to bed hungry, that we don't have homeless veterans? How do we make sure that Granny doesn't have to choose between cat food and medicine? How do we make the lives of working people better. That's it. That's it. And that line in the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, we throw those things together, we are going to move in a direction that's going to make not just our lives better, but the lives of the rest of us, the lives of all of the people in our country better. We shouldn't just have the haves who have, well, a lot, and then the rest of us. We should be fighting to make it better for all of us. And then, like I said, in the coming weeks and months, we're going to get to know each other. There are numerous ways to connect with me in the program. Email is probably the easiest, rick@thericksmithshow.com. You can email me anytime. I do answer all emails personally, especially the crazy ones, because I think those are the opportunities to have conversations and the opportunities to get to know each other and to find common ground, which for me, and this is where the last several years have been very interesting. If there's something that we can agree on, it's this idea that reward for work should be something we should be fighting for. When I grew up, there was this belief that we were a meritocracy, that if you worked hard, you played by the rules, you got ahead. We were sold this idea that, you could pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Sadly, not too many people have bootstraps. And, sadly, these giant corporate interests stealing your bootstraps. I think we saw that coming out of the pandemic. This is an opportunity to start talking about how do we mobilize around the ideas of giving people pathways to opportunity. The reason I am such a big union supporter is it brings back that idea of reward for work. And while everyone was focused on the previous administration and how just out there they could be, my focus was, how do we make lives better? How do we return that reward to work? How do we return that meritocracy back to possible? What we've seen over these last 40, 50 years is a shift from what my grandparents' generation built, which was the most prosperous working class in the history of civilization. We love to talk about the middle class. We love to talk about, we're in the middle. No, the most prosperous working class. You punch a clock, you go to work, you sweat at the end of the day, you take a shower when you get home. You're a worker. And you should earn a living wage. You should have reasonable health security. You should have reasonable health security and retirement security like my grandparents had. The reality is not asking to make a killing, just asking to have a decent life. That's the premise of this program. That's the premise of what things we're going to be talking about. And look, we're going to cover the gamut from politics to work to social commentary to all of it. You're going to drive a lot of it. Like I said, there's ways to connect. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all of the social media platforms you can get to us. Rick Smith Show is the keyword. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Now, I do want to hear your stories. This pandemic has put us all in this weird kind of spot. I want to hear the stories coming out of the workforce. How did you fare? Did you get the platitude? Did you get the pat on the back? Did you get the raise? Did you get the bonus that they've clawed back? These are things we need to be talking about. So in the next segment, I'm going to bring on my good friend Randy Korgan. Going to talk about the work that they're doing in the Inland Empire at Teamsters Local 1932, why this is an important project of getting out into the community and organizing and engaging and talking about how do we make the lives of working people better? What specifically can we do to make your life better? For me, that's the goal in this. Because as I've said, I've been very fortunate. And instead of slamming the door behind me and saying, hey, I got mine, for me, this is the mission. This is the goal forward, is to make sure that my kids and your kids and future generations have the same opportunity, the same pathway, the same chances. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. rick@thericksmithshow.com is the email. When we come back, Randy Korgan is going to be here. Secretary Treasurer, Principal Officer at Teamsters Local 1932. Their website, teamsters1932.org. We will get links out on social media how you can check that out. Also, make sure you subscribe to our podcast. You can find that at thericksmithshow.com as well. Lots of .coms. You can get that at the website as well. Another .com. Back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. Labor unions built the middle class, and the middle class built America. That's the message from Teamsters Local 1932, a strong and successful labor union based in San Bernardino that represents over 14,000 hardworking people across the Inland Empire. The Teamsters are ready to help you organize for better pay, increased benefits, and improved working conditions. Reach out to Teamsters 1932 at teamsters1932.org/organize to speak with an organizer today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I love the fact that Bernie Sanders on May Day tweeted out that in Denmark, as the result of strong unions, McDonald's workers make $22 an hour, get 6 weeks paid vacation, and a year of paid leave. In the U.S., Bernie Sanders says 58% of McDonald's workers make less than $12 an hour and no benefits, while its CEO makes $20 million. As he says, every worker needs a union. May Day 2022, and I could not agree more. And look, they say, "Oh no, we can't afford it." You can afford it. You choose not to. And this is why I think it's so important that we talk about how workers come together, join and form unions, fight for better wages, hours, conditions, and more importantly, opportunity, dignity, and respect. And here to share some thoughts on how we begin that process and where we should be going, I've asked Randy Korgan to come talk with us. Randy is the principal officer and secretary-treasurer of Teamsters Local 1932 in the Inland Empire, where they represent more than 14,000 hard-working men and women across the area. Randy, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me, Rick. Really appreciate being here. You got a great voice out there for labor.
So let me start off with saying thank you for bringing us to the area. Thank you for being our exclusive sponsor. But I got to tell you, been a huge fan of the work that you guys have been doing in the area for a while. The fact that you're on the ground, building local relationships, talking about the health center, training centers, all the stuff that you're doing with local business. This is the model forward. Well, it's the model from the past that I think is going to move us forward.
Yeah, it's nothing new. It's the pieces that were put together 100 years ago, 80 years ago that really built the labor movement, joining the community, building real partnerships in all the different areas, whether it be small business, your local community groups and coalitions, in addition to your city council, your school board members and activists. It's amazing what people will do when they all come together. And it's really amazing how many people are affected by unions in a positive way. And especially once they understand where we can all work together to make a difference in our local community. It's
Absolutely.
Fun to do.
Now, the thing here is, and this is where I've been talking for years about the fact that, you think of the last 50 years, corporate America and their henchmen have been engaging in an all-out assault on workers and their worker representatives, unions being front and center to this. So you guys are kind of, at a disadvantage in this moment because there's been a 50-year assault on you guys, and the messaging has been unions are bad and create an adversarial relationship that doesn't always have to be.
Very true. But what we got to look at is workers in the 1920s and 30s. They had it far worse than we did. And we have to look at the advantage that we have comparatively speaking. Yes, you're right. Corporate America's narrative has won over in the last 40 or 50 years and kind of beat through the media sort of center point as far as what people are hearing on a regular basis. And you have multiple generations of the workforce that just heard unions were bad. But the reality is we're nowhere near where we were in a position that workers were in the 1920s and 30s, when real worker power joined together with the community, demanded something different, and actually accomplished what you say in the very beginning is, how are we going to make workers' lives better? And they did. They did under very, very difficult circumstances, and we're doing it again as we speak, and it's fun to be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, it's when you boil something down, it's that simple. How do we make workers' lives better? And when you look at things through that frame, I think things get a lot simpler, and we're able to have simpler conversations without a lot of the noise and a lot of the distraction. Because I believe, and I'll use the billionaire class words against them, the old Jay Gould quote, "I can pay half the working class to murder the other half." You see that played out in various ways of how different groups are pitted against one another, so that, we don't focus on what our interests are, making sure our kids get fed, making sure we've got a roof over our head, making sure we have health security and retirement security. For me, it always comes back down to those kitchen table economic issues is where our wheelhouse should be.
Absolutely. Affordable health care. Anybody who works in America should have affordable health care until the day they die, not just for some short period of time. And what is affordable health care? Health care provided by their employer, including retiree medical, that gets them to the end. And that's all the way until, their final days. It's having those sorts of conversations and making sure, corporate America wants to say, well, it's too expensive. You're right. You created a situation where it is too expensive. But we have to figure out how to do what's right by workers and what's right by people every day. There's enough money out there. Take the money, put it in the right place, and make sure that people can have some dignity and respect. The worst thing to see is somebody who's worked 30, 35, 40 years of their lives and to get to the end and not to have health care and to be driven into poverty as a result of issues around their health is just insane. It makes absolutely no sense that we live in a system like that. And the crazy thing is there's enough money made by these corporations to help fix that, even if the providers are out of control, overcharging the current situation.
No, I mean, we are the wealthiest country in the history of civilization at its wealthiest moment, and yet we make policy choices based on what the handfuls want instead of what we the people want. And again, this comes back down to, I think we've been divided and conquered, which is why I think what you're doing is so important, getting out into the streets and organizing people and talking to people and engaging in the kind of discussions that are going to unite us. But it's not always easy. I got to tell you, I've had conversations with folks where it's easy to get hung up on the outrage candy. It's easy to get hung up on the things that tear us apart instead of what unites us. And look, I look at the fact that wages, hours, conditions should be something that brings us together.
Yeah, you say organizing workers. What does that mean? It means a lot of different things. Organizing workers at the school board to demand something that's going on in their local community, or at city government, some policy that's going to make sure that workers are not facing as egregious working conditions as are out there. And you divide and conquer. Worker power is nonpartisan. It's amazing to see when workers fully understand their power, regardless if you're a Democrat or Republican or independent or whatever you may think. When it comes to working people issues and issues that are affecting them on the job, that's a nonpartisan issue. People can fight about whether they like the D's or the R's or the Dodgers or the Yankees. But at the end of the day, making sure that we're organizing workers, organizing communities, partnering up with one another, and developing those real relationships that when you come forward to an entity, a local entity, and you demand change in a respectful way and understand your civic responsibility and what can happen at city government, local government, as well as what can happen in these town halls where working people come together, identify their power, organize themselves, and then put demands upon corporate America that are going to make life easier for everybody.
Yeah. So Dodgers or Yankees?
Dodgers.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're with Randy Korgan. Randy's the Secretary, Treasurer, Principal Officer at Teamsters Local 1932. Teamsters 1932 is the .org is the website. We'll get links out on social media how you can check out their website. If something you like here you want to learn more about, by all means, teamsters1932.org/organize. If you're interested in organizing a union in your workplace, highly suggested. Now, again, you go back to this power thing, Randy, and I've talked about this a lot. This sense of empowerment in the workplace does translate into everything else. And it's something that, in my conversations on this program, I talk about often. I have been very fortunate that I've always had a union card in my wallet. I've always been empowered to be able to speak my mind in the workplace where I have, where most people have the least amount of power. And I feel that in society as a whole. So politically, I feel emboldened to speak out. In my community, I feel emboldened to speak out. And I think that's contagious. And I think this is what corporate America and the wealth class of this country is concerned about, which is why I think unions have been, public enemy number one for a very long time, and why I think it's important that people reclaim that ground. And why, someone like, Amazon would spend so much money, $200 million, to push back on a single organizing campaign. They understand return on investment, where I think a lot of us don't.
Yeah, being part of helping workers travel the journey of organizing, in other words, going from non-union to then wanting to make changes at work, and then actually walking side by side with them as they demand change upon their employer and succeed, and then have successive contracts. I feel so lucky to be part of doing that with tens of thousands of workers over the last nearly 30 years. And it's incredibly empowering to see individuals come together collectively, recognize that they got to listen to their coworkers, see what's important with one another, and then we realize we have more in common than we have that we don't have in common. And then in the face of corporate America's anti-union busting that's really taken off, the billion-dollar industry over the last 40 years, that is really built to just create this level of fear that you're going to lose something. And we can talk about it at a later date, the psychology that goes into union busting and why they do the things that they do, they being those employers and those union busters. But when workers are empowered, educated, and understand all the specifics, they run right over that. They run right through that process, and they don't allow that negativity. They don't allow that fear mongering. They don't allow all that divisiveness to beat them. And then now, more than 2 decades later, I've seen workers, they're in a matured contract. They got retiree medical. They've got good health care. They've got a retirement plan. And it wasn't one easy. It had to start from somewhere. Unlike, I'm like you, I came into a union job. I didn't have to organize. And we inherited something that workers 30, 40, 50 years before us had fought to gain, and made sure that there was something fair for us on day one. Yeah. And I think a lot of workers take that for granted, at least in the union environment. The non-union environment, man, there's a lot of people struggling out there with some tough conditions.
Yeah, I got about a minute and a half here. I want to get your thoughts, because something you said, triggered my mind. Someone will go, but you sound anti-business, because we keep talking about big business and the power that they have and how they're attacking workers. You're not anti-business, right?
Absolutely not. We just want a fair deal for everybody so everybody can operate. You got to make sure if the employer's making a profit, the worker's got to make a profit. Obviously, you don't want to run the employer into the negative to where they don't make a profit and they go out of business. Then obviously the workforce doesn't have a job to go to. But there's always a happy medium and compromise where the worker can get a fair share of the pie. The employer can be profitable, and everybody can continue to have their lives improve as time goes on, versus what you've seen over the last 30 years is this shift where healthcare costs are being dumped on workers. Retirement plans are being dumped on workers. All these liabilities are being dumped on workers. And it caused this situation that we see economically, where you have a large percentage of the population hit the wall as a result of not being able to afford to even operate and kind of, day to day, be able to buy groceries.
Yeah, it's crazy. And as I'll quote Samuel Gompers, the former head of the AFL, who said, it should be criminal that a corporation doesn't operate as a profit. And I say that because come negotiation times, I want to sit down, open up their books, and find out how much of it we can get for our members and how much a wage increase workers can put into their pocket. But Randy, I got to take a quick break right here. Stick around through the break. I got some more questions for you. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Randy Korgan. He is the Secretary, Treasurer, Principal Officer, Teamsters Local 1932. Their website, teamsters1932.org. Make sure you check that out. If you're just joining us, make sure you never miss a second of the show. Download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day 8,000 UAW workers at the Allis-Chalmers plant in Milwaukee voted overwhelmingly to walk off the job. Close to 12,000 production and maintenance workers were on strike across the country. Workers rode the post-war strike wave as whole industries moved to peacetime reconversion. Historian Eric Slocum notes that UAW Local 248 had a historically militant left-wing leadership, was known for its support to housing desegregation campaigns in the city, and was a central driving force of Milwaukee's CIO Council. They had built a strong shop steward and grievance structure at Allis-Chalmers and were sure victory was certain. Local President Robert Busey insisted wage increases were not at issue, but rather unresolved issues remained to be settled now that the war was finally over. Key points of contention were the company's demands to eliminate maintenance of membership agreements that guaranteed the closed shop and union dues. The company also wanted to stop paying stewards for the time involved in grievance procedures. The Allis-Chalmers strike was a harbinger of things to come. Historian Martin Halpern states that the company officials played a significant role in the crafting of Taft-Hartley legislation as the strike unfolded. Allis-Chalmers was on a union-busting campaign and made no small effort to red-bait union leaders for months in local newspapers. By the fall, workers at the smaller plants had returned to work, but the Milwaukee local stood firm. Area CIO workers joined picket lines in support, only to be brutalized and arrested. The House Un-American Activities Committee arrived in town to investigate the strike, and the company instigated a vigorous back-to-work campaign. After 11 months, the strike was called off with no contract and 91 union leaders fired.
For many people, the animals they adopt and love become more like family members than pets. We have deep relationships with cats, dogs, parrots, goats, horses, and other fellow critters who at least pretend to love us back, providing comfort and joy all around. Sadly, though, life for all of us animals is a spin around the wheel of fortune, so illness and injuries happen. That's why one of the most valued members of every community are the staffers in our local veterinarian offices. Practically all vets, nurses, technicians, and support staff are there chiefly because they love animals and get personal satisfaction from providing care for them. When I say they are there, I not only mean 9 to 5, but this group of independent health providers are committed to being there when needed, including off hours and days off, for animal misfortune and suffering don't go by clocks and calendars. Local practitioners also try to be there for low-income people, offering deferred payment plans and even discounted fees so their animals can get the treatment they need. But wait, sound the ambulance sirens. Something is going horribly wrong. This venerable profession has recently been collapsing into a corporate model of Wall Street-owned chains. They're monopolizing markets, reducing staff, gutting service, and prioritizing the love of money over the love of animals. It's not uncommon these days for frantically worried customers to bring an ill or injured pet into their old reliable vet office, only to find it has quietly come under chain ownership, is understaffed, and is unwilling to accept the patient, forcing a desperate scramble to find emergency care, often out of town. This is Jim Hightower saying the same profiteering corporate mentality that has proven disastrous for human health care is now rapidly locking down pet care, and that's an act of animal cruelty.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Special welcome to our friends in the Inland Empire, Loma Linda, Riverside, San Bernardino. Welcome to the program. Looking forward to hearing from you early, often. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Follow us on Twitter @RickSmithShow, Facebook, YouTube, all of that. Make sure you follow along, subscribe, share your thoughts. Want to hear it? By all means, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. This is the conversation I think we need to have to be moving the country forward. You want to figure out how we make lives better for working people? This is how we begin to do it. One of my premises, you want to change the world? We start by changing our little piece of it one day at a time, one community at a time, and one show at a time. So welcome here to the Rick Smith Show. I've asked our good friend Randy Korgan to stay over through the break. Randy is the Secretary Treasurer and Principal Officer of Teamsters Local 1932 in San Bernardino, where they represent more than 14,000 hardworking folks in the Inland Empire. If you want to check out their website, teamsters1932.org, I highly suggest it. They are our exclusive sponsor for this hour, and I'll tell you, as I said at the beginning, proud as I can be of that, just by the fact that I've been a card-carrying Teamster for more than 30 years myself. Randy, thanks for sticking around through the break.
Yeah, thanks for having me even on a little longer. I appreciate it. I get to spread a little bit more message out there.
Again, I appreciate the confidence that you guys have in the work that we do. As you know, we've been doing this 17 years now, and we've been fighting the fight and spreading the word. And as I said to you earlier, I love the work that you do. I love the fact that you're on the ground engaging people. And I want to go through some of the things that you do that I just think are fabulous. I know you're talking about you're in the process of opening up a clinic. You're doing some training center stuff. There's just a lot that you're going through, and I think people need to know it. So walk me through some of the great stuff you're doing.
Oh, first I want to say our membership's amazing. Our members do such a great job of taking care of the community and making sure the community is safe and healthy every single day. And they're helping us transform the Inland Empire. Many years ago, we came up with that slogan. We've been challenging local community groups as well as local elected officials to transform the Inland Empire. And what does that mean? The Inland Empire had a lot of economic challenges after 2008, as a lot of areas did, but more so than the rest of the country for a lot of reasons. I don't need to get into all those reasons, but what we did is we built a platform here in the IE based in San Bernardino that built a relationship with small businesses. I'll give you an example. Our Teamster Advantage program, we've partnered up with more than 700 small businesses in the area. We advertise for them for free. We don't charge anything. We notify our membership, hey, there's a Taco Tuesday, there's flowers for Mother's Day. These small businesses offer up our membership a small discount if they participate. And then we obviously encourage our membership to shop locally in that system. In addition to that, we have trainings, we have community events, we have the car show that we host here. Last year we had over 1,000 residents and members show up and come to the next one's on May 21st. We actually have an entire program where we're demanding community benefit agreements at with the local government, with city councils and school boards. And what does that mean? It's making sure that when developments come in, not anti-development, we want to make sure development's smart. We want to make sure that workers don't lose out when developers come to town, and when there's new jobs coming, what kind of jobs are there? What's the criteria around it? We have committees here we have the Women's Committee, the LGBTQ Committee, the Hispanic Caucus, youth helpers. We've partnered with a number of school districts and high schools in the area on the High School to High Paying Jobs program, which will create a pipeline into our training center that's going live next month in June. We're going to be taking kids that 82% of the kids in this area, when they graduate, they do not go to college. So that means they're going to be in the workforce. Let's get them right into a good job. Let's make sure to get them right into a good union job so they don't bounce around out there, pick up bad habits, or get hurt as a result of being in some of those poor work environments that are non-union out there. We make sure that we have a local school drive initiative where every single month we pick a school in the area and we donate to them specifically and build that partnership even deeper and further. And we essentially have just built a strong relationship and continue to build a strong relationship, because it's never done, with the community, where we just become real partners to where they understand how positive unions are and how good unions are on a local economy. At all of these different areas. There's a lot of other things we can talk about as far as organizing is concerned, just getting the message out and bringing a narrative that union workers are the best workers in America. Union workers are helping the community every single day, whether it's delivering a package, making sure a kid has food, or answering 911. That's usually a Teamster in the Inland Empire, and a lot of them are our members.
Well, the message that I take from it is the union members are the community. Ultimately, it's who we are and what we are, and making lives better, again, for everyone. And what you're talking about, and I don't mean to rain on the parade, not new. This is what built the labor movement of my grandparents' generation. This is the kind of community where the Union Hall was the center of the community, where where families were married and merged, and parties and lives were led in the Union Hall. This is the kind of stuff that I've been talking about for years that we need to get back to. So to hear that it's in practice, to hear that we're moving forward and that it's actually happening is music to my ears.
You're right, Rick. The secret's out, right? We stole the ideas from who had built the labor movement originally and just kind of put them into practice, put all of them into practice, at least as much as we could handle. You're right. That's what built the labor movement. That's what brought the awareness. That's what built the relationship and the bridge between workers and unions. While corporate America wants to deem unions as a third party outside organization, you said it a minute ago. Union workers are the community, period. They're coaching baseball. They're the individuals that are making sure that the pothole is fixed. They're the individual that's making sure your child is being taught in school. They're the nurse. Every aspect of the community, we are somehow, union workers are in the middle of it, and they're helping it move in a positive direction. Unions aren't some outside third-party institution. It's people, it's working people, and that's where worker power comes from once workers understand that collective ability.
For me, it is that simple. Now, ultimately, again, I come back to this premise of how do we make people's lives better? And look, you're doing great stuff. You're in the community. You're doing this. But unfortunately, you look around and all of the directions are heading towards, everyone's a gig worker. You've got this behemoth in the room of Amazon, the Walmarts. You've got these giant, behemoth, almost monopolistic corporations who are pushing down wages and destroying conditions. And the horror stories that I've talked to about people are just, horrific. How do we begin to push back on that? Because sometimes, people feel that, it's insurmountable. How's one person going to take on Amazon? And look, I look at the story in New York of that Chris Smalls guy who we've had on this program a number of times, and he's risen up. But how does the average person stand up and fight and move us in a direction that you feel that you can take this on?
Unfortunately, the last couple generations have forgotten or didn't really take ownership of their civic responsibility and realize how much power you have. Canvassing is one of those ways. Talking to people on their doorstep, talking to individuals inside of the community. And what that does is it creates a level of awareness, and then the workforce starts to realize where they can effectuate change. Not to wait on someone else to make change for you, but what can you specifically do by going to that school board meeting, go to that city council meeting, go to that town hall meeting, bring your kids with you, have them part of the process to where they understand and learn how it all works. And you hit the nail on the head. All these big corporations, the way that they're taking advantage of everybody, they subcontract to subcontract to subcontract. So you'll have this employer at the top, and then they're subcontracting to this group that then subcontracts to another and another. And then it's a race to the bottom where everybody's competing to steal that contract versus taking ownership and saying, hey, I want my employees as the employer to be the best paid, to have the best benefits, and to be able to retire here. And to be able to have a long career to where at the end, when they retire in dignity. And the way we take that on, and look, Rick, I've helped more than 30,000 workers go through this process in my career. And I know it seems insurmountable. And that's a small drop in the bucket compared to the millions of workers that are across the country. The reality is having that conversation one at a time, face to face, one-on-one, and once a worker understands their rights and engages, they then share it with the next worker, and it grows. I've seen groups that start with just a handful turn into 14,000, 15,000 workers that then achieve success as a result of building that chain out correctly, making sure that you're building those relationships and people are working together. And it boils down to talking, listening, and educating one another and listening to others and what their struggles are and sharing in that, helping them, they help you, and then you will have success in the end. That's organizing 101. A lot more goes into it. but it's a beautiful process once you see workers engage. You can see it in New York with Chris Smalls. That employer fired him. What he did is he rode the bus, he stood out front, he talked to workers in their neighborhoods, talked to them in their social groups, talked to them in their community. They grew out and grew out and grew out, and then workers believed, you know what, we can have something better. And it was homegrown. Those workers in New York, they took on the boss. They walked off the job multiple times, demanded change. Ultimately, they ended up winning that election, but where they really had their worker power was when they were taking on the boss on the shop floor, demanding change right there. The election win was just a result of those actions, not that the election win is going to have you take on the boss. Taking on the boss on the shop floor is where we get it done. Rick.
There you go. Randy, I'm looking forward to the days, weeks, and months ahead. I'm looking forward to changing the world, making lives better, and the work that you're doing is a huge part of it as you work to make the Inland Empire a better place. I hope folks will check out your website, teamsters1932.org. We will get links out on social media, and folks can do that. But thanks for being here. I'm sure we will have many conversations in the weeks and months ahead. Thanks again. I appreciate it. It was great having this first conversation with you.
Thank you. We're proud to be a sponsor here, and we're proud to be linked up with you at the hip. We love it.
Good stuff. Thanks, Randy. Appreciate it. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Something you heard got on your mind. I want to hear it. rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us, make sure you never miss a moment of the program. Download the podcast. Become a subscriber. Go to thericksmithshow.com. All right there. We're going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1899. That was the day that Idaho miners detonated 50 cases of dynamite at the Bunker Hill and Sullivan mine in Wardner. For nearly a decade, Idaho miners and owners had been locked in a bitter battle in the Coeur d'Alene district. The mining companies fought against unionization. They hired Pinkerton detectives to infiltrate union meetings and fire those who dared to hold a union card. In 1893, the Western Federation of Miners was founded and became a major organizing union in the region. Bunker Hill remained non-union, drawing the ire of workers in the surrounding mines. A group of miners took over a train and loaded it with dynamite. The Western Federation of Miners paper, the Idaho State Tribune, described what happened next, writing, quote, "A detachment of Union miners armed with Winchester rifles was dispatched to the mountainside beyond the mill, and the work of placing under the mill the 3,000 pounds of dynamite taken from the magazine of the Frisco mine at Gem was commenced. At no time did the demonstration assume the appearance or the attitude of a disorganized mob. All of the details were managed with the discipline and precision of a perfectly trained military organization. The response was swift and brutal. Federal troops were called in. Along with gun-toting thugs hired by the company, they arrested every man they could find, not just miners. Even a doctor and a postmaster were swept up in the arrests. More than 1,000 men were arrested. They were held in a makeshift bullpen made from a converted barn. Some were held as long as a year without any formal charges filed until the unionization effort was crushed. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @laborhistoryin2. Are you underpaid and overworked? Is a living wage and employee benefits like affordable health care more of a dream than a reality for you and your family? If so, it's time to form a union. Don't be denied the wages and benefits you deserve. Come together in a union with the power of numbers. A union is not a privilege, it's your right, and it will make a difference. Contact Teamsters Local 1932, a powerful and successful labor union in San Bernardino, by visiting teamsters1932.org/organize to start today. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Special welcome to our newest listeners, KCAA in the Inland Empire, San Bernardino, Riverside. We're looking at you, Loma Linda. Thanks for tuning in. Looking forward to hearing from you early and often. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Share your thoughts, questions, comments. Got an email from Jerry from Ohio that I had to get into a little bit. He writes, Rick, I'm relatively new to the political scene, having been busy raising a family and paying bills. Caught your show on Free Speech TV a few months ago and have been an avid viewer. That said, I was listening to a podcast that suggested that you suggested and heard them mention a statement put out by the Business Roundtable a few years ago. They talked as if everyone knew what they were talking about. What was the statement and why is it noteworthy? Good question, Jerry. It was back then, it was August 19th, 2019. It was kind of the business example of the ground shifting. You go from the Reagan era forward, greed is good, the one who dies with the most toys wins, that kind of, the shareholder supremacy. You could argue it came from the late 60s through the 70s, Milton Friedman and all of that, the way business thinks, completely different. It wasn't about communities. It wasn't about workers. It sure as heck wasn't about workers. It was no longer about the customer. It was about maximizing shareholder value. And we heard that a lot during the 80s, especially in the go-go 90s. And 2000s, a lot of pain, suffering. Now we have mass inequality. And in 2019, one of the big issues that came up politically was inequality. And I have said it is the biggest problem that we have in this country right now is how wide the inequality gap is. The gap between the rich and the poor is growing wider and wider virtually every day. And the pandemic has really, really made that worse. Well, on August 19th, 2019, the Business Roundtable, who are like 200 of these big, our captains of industry, the titans of industry, they signed a letter, a purpose of a corporation statement is what they said. They do this every year, talking about what their views are. This was a major shift for them, where they admitted that, hey, we've only cared about the shareholders. We never really cared about anyone else. So it's their view, and what Jamie Dimon, the head of the Business Roundtable, was saying is, he said, look, we now care about communities. We're now going to start caring about customers. And most laughably, we now care about workers. I'm sorry. This makes me laugh. But it made me go back, Jerry, and thank you for the email, and go back and dig through our archives and pick out what I said on that day. And I've put it out on our podcast. It's about 9 minutes commentary of the day. But here's a quick, a minute and a half clip of what it was as an explainer. That the Business Roundtable, I know most people don't know who the Business Roundtable is. It's about 200 CEOs from the big corporations. So the real big corporations, their CEOs all get together occasionally and they figure out how they're going to destroy the planet. Today, evidently, they came out of their meeting and they have a new statement. And Jamie Dimon, who is evidently the chairman of this Business Roundtable, said, quote, Americans deserve an economy that allows each person to succeed through hard work and creativity and to lead a life of meaning and dignity. Should I be the one that points out that, Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan Chase were one of the drivers of the last collapse that cost, millions of people their homes and their savings? Should I be the one who throws that out, or is that just common knowledge at this point? And that the people in this little round table, well, I'm sure it's a giant oval, they've been screwing us for decades. These are the people who have been breaking the unions. These are the people who have been changing the laws to benefit themselves. These are the people who have spent, millions and millions of dollars lobbying our government to benefit them, more tax cuts for themselves, all of this stuff. And yet, now the Business Roundtable is saying, oh, well, now we're different. We're gonna from this point forward, we're gonna be different. We're gonna be different. We care now. So look, this is the reason I played that clip. And again, that's a smaller clip of the entire podcast. And I suggest go listen to the full commentary and then tell me, did I need my crystal ball coming out of the pandemic? Did they live up to their, we now care about customers and communities and workers? And clearly, I didn't need a crystal ball back on that day because they don't care about workers, communities, or their customers. It's still about the bottom line, especially when you look at the numbers that have come out of it. And this is where, in talking with Randy, the idea of worker power is so important, and why the pandemic was so important. You look at the fact that Brookings just did a study that showed, these 22 big corporations, the biggest in the industries, saw their shareholder value go up by $1.5 trillion, while the workforce saw a measly 2% increase. And you wonder why inequality is getting worse? It's getting worse because you have these corporations who are taking this opportunity to gouge us at every opportunity. The inflation that we're all struggling with right now is the fact that they are raising prices because they can. They're doing it because they can. All of these places that are around now doing these stock buybacks, the reality is, you know what a stock buyback is? A stock buyback is a corporation telling you, we have no productive means to use this money. Thank you, government. Thank you, taxpayer. Thank you, workers, for working for lower wages and less health care and less retirement security and less of everything. Thank you for giving us more. But we have nothing productive to do with this money. We have nothing to invest in, no new equipment, no new technology, no new workers, no new nothing. We have no way to use this money to increase our business so that, because we're told this, that we give them all the money so that they can expand their business and hire new workers. And it's going to be good for all of us. It'll trickle down. It's going to come down to all of us. But what do? They take the money, they buy back their shares, they pump up the price of their stock, and their CEOs pocket the difference. The shareholders, they make out like bandits because the stock price keeps going up. CEOs make out like bandits because, hey, it looks like, our stock price is going up because that's how we evaluate business in these days, not by how well workers are doing, not about how well communities are doing, not about how well customers are doing. No, how well Wall Street is doing. So when we start talking about being business friendly or anti-business, let's talk about the right things. And the reason I think Randy and his local there are on the right track is they're talking about the right things. They're talking about engaging business on the right platforms. I'm talking about doing the right things. I'm sorry, your shareholder value and your stock price, not all that important to me when we've got kids going to bed hungry. Not all that important to me when we're talking about a student loan debt crisis that we're seeing in this moment. That's dividing us intergenerationally, dividing us by class, by race. Again, divide and conquer. We are being pitted against each other, and it's our opportunities that are being destroyed. The sooner we come together, the sooner we put aside the noise, we stop consuming the outrage candy, and we stand shoulder to shoulder, the better off we're going to all be. At least that's my view. I'd love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. I want to know. rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you got ideas for topics, you got suggestions of guests, we also want to hear that. If you've missed any of today's program, make sure you download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com. Never miss an episode, never miss a show. Also, check out our free speech TV programs as well. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.